Hi everyone. So this is going to be a wrap-up video. We found a small leak just above the bathroom commode area, and there is a lady who is the secretary of this 32 unit block, which is B12, and she is someone who's been living here for 40 years, way before even I was born. And she sells coconuts in one of these areas which typically falls under as a reservation area. But from what we understand, the National Housing Development Authority, which is typically in charge of that area, has transferred the ownership to the Urban Council at some point, and the Urban Council of Moratuwa I'm talking about. And she has been taking that area and have been selling coconuts, and she is also the secretary. Now, when the first complaint happened, so we were thinking, okay, so we have been giving a certain amount per month in order to conduct the management corporation, which is the committee of the flat typically. So we thought something would be done, but unfortunately she turned a deaf ear. So eventually we were trying to just keep quiet. We were trying to talk to the second floor people. To be honest, it's very funny how they thought that we are attacking them at a personal level, whereas we were just trying to get the leak matter sorted. So long story short, nothing was happening. And then we are on the first floor. The people on the ground floor unit, they started complaining to us saying, see, we are getting leaks through the wall, and why don't you make your bathroom? And we were thinking, okay, we just moved in and we have just refurbished the place and the bathroom is also done. How come there is a leak? And we sent our first complaint to the CMA in 2017, if I remember. We didn't mention the ground floor people complaining, but we did mention that we are getting this leak issue from the second floor. So nothing was done, and that is when I realized CMA does not have a clear process. CMA does not have a clear process when this happens. They try to kind of send letters just to like evade the whole thing. And of course, people can always say, oh, we don't have money. So if we don't have money, then what happens? There is no clear process. So initially, when we tried approaching the unit owners of the second floor, they were unwilling to even talk to us. So while we were refurbishing, we couldn't do anything about it. So now once we're done refurbishing, we as occupants, we are also not ready to spend more money, right? And when CMA started just sending letters, I think for a good 6 years, they've just sent letters. And of course, then we had the COVID and the economic crisis that happened. So while all this was happening for a long time. While this was happening, we found something really bizarre taking place. That is this. And this is when I started questioning Mummy, what is happening? CMA has not been able to solve this issue of a leak for a very, very long time, but they started giving approval for a certain car park structure. Now, we were not even aware that a car park structure is going to come up. So now if you look at this slide that I'm showing you, so there is a church called St. Anthony's Church in Soysapura, and it was built in 1994 from the sources that I was able to find on the internet. And this is the church that has been built with the help of a lot of Buddhists as well, as per that article that I read on the internet. But however, while talking to this secretary lady who sells coconuts in the NHDA reserved area that has now been transferred, she somehow tries to use this church as an excuse for her behavior of encroaching and all of that. This is the only entrance that we have. Now this is B12, and this green arrow is the only area through which vehicles can come in. And this road, this gravel road, ends with a drain. Now we had around easily about 20 feet here, okay, that is from the entrance. Now we are living on the first floor. Now there are 32 units here. These 32 units are actually divided into 4 sections, okay? So 4 sections, and each section has one entrance that leads to 6 upper floor units, and there are 2 ground floor units on either side of each of these entrances. So there are 4 entrances on this block. Now we are living on this cornermost section where we live on the first floor. All of a sudden we notice this section which easily had about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong again, but definitely it had 20 or more than 20 feet between the entrance of the block, the section that we are living in, and these government approved shops that have been built long time ago. These government approved shops are right behind St. Anthony's Church, Soysapura. Now all of a sudden in this area that I'm showing you, the field officers came here and they started giving approval for car parks. Now we didn't know about this. I think it was in 2019. We walked out and we asked what's happening, and then they said car parks are being approved, and we realized the ground floor unit owners, now we don't have any issues against ground floor unit owners at all, but I do understand ground floor unit owners in general in most of these government flats in not just in Soysapura, around the island, they have the tendency of kind of taking a few feet forward because they have that ground space. And we were pretty okay with it because legally I know it's not allowed as per policy, but a lot of people do that. So same way B12 also, these people have been doing that, and this also happened very strongly after we came in. We didn't really see this when we brought the unit. After we came in only we saw these encroachment of 3 or 4 feet being taken by every ground floor unit owner. So we were fine with that because we saw that happening all around Soysapura. But our problem was, once this car park structure was approved, now this gravel road ends with a drain. That red line that you see, it ends with a drain or a very narrow road, and a vehicle that comes in, it cannot take a U-turn. Now anyone who is into construction, please tell me, what is a typical road width when the road ends with a dead end, like an apartment structure like this? What is the typical road width that is required by law? I'm sure there is some solid measurement. I've been asking this even from people who come here on and off to check the space, because everyone understands something is not right, but we understand this is an approval that is hindering vehicles coming in and going out. Now the issue is, if a vehicle comes in, it can't take a U-turn easily. So we have been suggesting to the CMA that there needs to be a road. A road needs to come into this area, just like the flats behind us. There are flats that are behind B12, and these flats at the entrance, they have a road. But in our case, we don't have a proper road, and our topology is such, there's a slant, there's a slope, whereas towards the end of the block, all the water gets accumulated, and we also see there is a lot of water just stagnated at the end of this block every time there is heavy rain, and you can't think of going out when there is a heavy rain. There has been a situation where I have cancelled my appointments because there was heavy rain and I can't step out of the house, and this water accumulates just here. Okay, now I'm telling CMA could have avoided all of this just by saying, hey, I know you want car parks and all of that, but we can't allow you to build car parks like this. And even a car park would have been okay if the structure was properly done, and that's the saddest part. So G1 is the cornermost unit in the ground floor, and that's where the president of the committee lived. So now this car park approval in 2019, upper floor units, a lot of us were not even included or even thought of. The reason the CMA showed in their letters was it was given on a first come first serve basis. So even to go on a first come first serve basis, they didn't even let us know for us to even initiate and ask for a car park in the first place. Now this is the view that we have when we look out of the house, right? So I'm telling few things that happened because certain ground floor occupants, when I say certain, I'm just referring to one ground floor occupant who is not even part of the MC, but it's a bit of a complicated issue. They have been using the car park for all these different things: furniture making, garage, clothes, and that also not on their car park, on other people's. And here you go. Everyone's car park is being used as a clothing rack. And commercial cars. Now there's a certain ground for individual who's not part of the committee. They want to keep their commercial cars inside one of these car parks, so that is a better option than getting one of the visitors to park there as and when they come. They don't want visitors to park anywhere near here. It feels like living in a jungle where animals try to protect their areas by pissing around the area. So I kind of feel the same here. Some uninvolved group of humans doing their thing. So as I mentioned, and the ground floor unit right below our unit, we are living on the first floor. This is the ground floor unit, and this is how they managed to fix their gate. How considerate, right? And we can't get our visitors to park vehicles even in the car parks when they come, but when someone comes to the ground floor, they can just obstruct the whole place and park just like that. And moreover, check out the ridgeback inside. Such a pleasure when trying to work online and attending meetings online with dogs barking. Great. Okay, so this is where I spoke about topology. This flat, this specific flat B12. Now this, I'm not going to say this is like common for everyone, okay? CMA, if it wishes, they can always show reasons as to why they want the car park structures or the encroachment gone. We are at the slope, the downward slope end, and you see water stagnating right after the rain. And there you go. Again, it just, they actually have 2 dogs. So again, I'm not against dogs, but the way people behave. And garbage collection is another issue where garbage trucks can't come in properly. When they come in, they kind of make a big fuss, but then again, we have been nice to them. At the end of the year, I know my mom, she tries to give each person who comes to collect garbage a pack of grocery or something, which I don't think it should be considered as bribe. We have to do that to them because they do a very difficult job at the end of the day, every single week, every single day. But then again, they do have issues in disposing plastic and paper, from what we understand, burning plastic and polythene right there from our flat, and you see we have no choice but inhale all that smoke. We even reached out to the PHI of the area in 2021, this is like 2 years ago, and nothing happened. We have told them to make sure that they put a board or something, and so that garbage will not be dumped there. But again, if you're asking someone not to dump garbage, I guess there has to be a clear process as to how you want to dispose them as well. So that is something that needs to be taken care of for sure. Well, now these are all issues that authorities, they need to plan, think long term, and make sure put in place. When that doesn't happen, and they only choose to send letters after letters, and that also, I've seen their letters coming in a way to create social unrest. Now, my mom, who's the unit owner, she's a secretary by profession. So she has been someone who has been typing letters and saying, she's not a lawyer, but she would just write her heart out, and then she sends it to the authorities saying these are issues. And then CMA just pinpoints her name, refers to her name, and sends letters to this secretary who also sells coconut for 40 long years in B12 Soysapura, the flat next to St. Anthony's Church, Soysapura. And she gangs up with another lady who has been inspired by this coconut selling lady. There's another lady from the ground floor. I'm not against small enterprises or people trying to do small businesses, but the problem is not doing them right, doing it the wrong way. That is the problem. They try to, now this is also something you might have heard in Sri Lanka, people try to find small corners that's not being used or reserved for some odd reason. Now National Housing Development Authority reserves certain areas and says you can't do anything in that area. So in those areas, only in the evening you might see a table coming out first. So on that table you might see some eggs on that, trying to sell eggs, and of course people who go after work, they buy eggs from this specific person, and that's completely fine. And eventually it becomes like a pressure for authorities. Oh my god, this is my livelihood, I'm on samurdhi, I'm a victim of economic crisis, so please help me, please help me, please help me, and everyone else is Santa around them. So that kind of mindset is something that I'm completely against, and I also see that as a problem to everyone in Sri Lanka. Now I know people looking at me will be like, oh Rochelle, you're well off and all of that. No, I come from a lower middle class family, and my mom, the only thing she gave with all what she earned was education. The demography of this scheme, you have a lot of empty nesters, meaning the children are abroad and the old people, they live alone in the flat. So these people will not work with government authorities or try to persuade government authorities very often, and they are okay to just be inside. But certain things like common elements, they have to be made, they have to make sure, the government authorities need to make sure those are kept in a way where people can freely use them without hindrances by people who want to do businesses or people who want to dominate for some odd reason. So that exactly is what's missing. So if you look at the screen that I'm showing, it just shows what happened after a certain letter that we got from the CMA. So CMA, all of a sudden, when we started sending letters, they realized that they have made a mistake by approving this car park while there was already encroachment done by these houses that are on the ground floor. So when I say encroachment, every ground floor unit around Soysapura scheme, you would see this encroachment has happened. But the issue, the difference here is, here the upper unit people, especially the cornermost unit or the cornermost section of B12 where we live in, there are 6 units that are affected by this, but not a lot of people talk about it. Like even the 6 units that I'm referring to, they also have their own differences, they don't really bother too much about it. But leave aside majority, leave aside all of that, just come and view it, and if you see it is hindering smooth entry and exit of vehicles, garbage trucks, of an ambulance, of a fire brigade, then that structure is not right. They should not have approved. It's simple as that. Okay, so this is what happened right at the end. There was a lot of shouting, and we do have a recording of this in case we need it in the future. And this is the letter that CMA sent us all of a sudden. So I have mentioned 2 names here. So let's call them Mr. U and Mr. S. So Mr. U and Mr. S have been in this area for a very long time from my understanding. So they are the ground officials. So one of these people, I think Mr. S is not a ground official but is part of the engineering community, and he also was part of evaluating this area before giving approvals. So my question is, Mr. U and Mr. S, did you do your feasibility study properly before you gave approval to these car park structures? Now, I'm not going to talk about all the car park structures around Soysapura because there are many people who have done this. But the problem here is they have properly inconvenienced units that are on the upper floor due to their negligence. So that is something I'm ready to say wherever I need to talk about this. And I know this is common to a lot of government organizations, and unfortunately we are living in a country where most of these people are at field level. If you think your salary is not enough to do your job, well, you're coming here for the pension, I'm sure, or the perks. You should go for a private job. If you want a government job, and if you ask for Anduwe Rassava karnakota, make sure you don't hinder long-term plans. You might leave the organization or your unit or your authority or the authority that you're involved in a couple of years, but the person who takes it after you is going through a lot of trouble because of those decisions that you made. So I have 3 questions. Relevant authorities, did they check the feasibility? That's question number 1. Question number 2. So one thing that happened, if you notice the previous slide that we showed, when the illegal structures were being asked to remove by CMA, they again quoted my mom because they obviously can't send letters, I suppose, without quoting or referring someone from the unit so that they can create more social conflict after approving structures without evaluating properly. So there's this lady from G2 who sells eggs, and she started demanding for 50,000. And clearly there are documents that these people have signed saying that they need to remove these structures as and when the authority asks them to do so. But they have not done that. So either the lady who is asking for 50,000 is not aware that she should not be asking for money from occupants when she doesn't want to remove the structure. Or if she is demanding for money, maybe she should go and talk to the Condominium Management Authority of Sri Lanka, and maybe the people who actually gave you the permission to have 2 car parks, though you're living on the ground floor unit. So that is quite funny, and specifically these 2 people that I've mentioned, I'm not going to say the names, but it's there for you to view if need be, Mr. U and Mr. S. Did they really think about the conveniences of people who are living on the upper floor when they gave such ideas to people who do businesses, or who are more keen on having businesses running in an area where the block is dedicated for residents, not for businesses mainly? So this is the thing. It might seem like I'm personally attacking people, but I want to reiterate, I have nothing against all these people who spoke filth or whatever. Even recently on the 7th of February, we went through a certain issue where my mom had to go to the police and complain about it. Point number 1, we don't mind talking to people who have different opinions, but if they can't speak it respectfully, then we have a problem. Secondly, we supported the committee, the management corporation, the lady who is the secretary who's selling coconut. When she comes and asks for money, we give money and all of that, as in to conduct, or rather to make sure there is smooth operations of the management corporation. But once we understood this is how they've been getting approvals, and they've been just going about doing their thing to promote their businesses and not really looking at the well-being of the vulnerable community, that's when we started having a problem. And ground level officials, I have to mention, there are ground level officials who I showed earlier. They contact these people who are more keen on doing businesses and tell them the moment we complain to the CMA, that information comes here even before we reach back to our units. So that is pathetic, to have ground level officials who would inform either this egg selling lady or even the coconut selling lady who is the secretary. So they are informed of all our complaints even before we enter the unit. So that's fine to tell that there's a complaint like this. But if that complaint is going to turn into a social unrest, or it's going to turn into a conflict trying to throw religious slurs or ethnic slurs at each other, because I come from a community where I speak all 3 languages, and if people have a problem with me not being a Sinhala Buddhist, or they have problems with the church or whatever, that is something they have to look at completely in a separate argument and not relate it to here. So my overall point is that we are living in a country where a lot of government servants must take their job to heart and do it seriously, because you might be giving approval thinking, oh okay, it's just a tiny approval I'm giving, it's not going to harm anyone. No, it is going to harm a lot of people, right? And I also would like to reiterate the fact, the last conversation I had with one of these field officials, Mr. Yu, you know what he said? Oh, so I'm going to translate this into English and say, he said this to me in Sinhala. So if you have a problem, you have to go and complain to the police, not to complain to the police. And then I go, sir, you give approval for these car park structures, and then you want me to waste my time and go and complain to the police when you jolly well can do something about it? And then he goes, no, if there is a murder, won't you go and lodge a complaint? So the same way, go and lodge a complaint, and then he hangs up on me. This is what happened when I called him on the 31st of January exactly. And on the 7th of February, again, they send a letter. CMA sends a letter that creates conflict within Soysapura B12. So tell me, what are your problems when you deal with government authorities, especially when it comes to state flats? Living in government flats for more than 2.5 decades, I realize how these approvals have really bothered, inconvenienced a lot of people. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Let me know. And this is just being on YouTube as a record for everyone in case there is something that happens in the future. Okay, take care.